can you tell me why these very specific details are important? Is it to paint the picture of what Cassie had to endure? Or is it to really show that what you said earlier, we are giving you step by step leading into the ultimate racketeering, RICO, and all those things, sex trafficking. So we got to be as detailed as possible.
It's both. So let me start with where you just landed. They have to be as detailed as possible. How dare any prosecutor? Because don't forget, Carlos, as much as I'm making the case and laying out the facts, I am a criminal defense lawyer by trade. That's what I did for a living. I was first a public defender, and then I was a private lawyer for defendants. So how dare a prosecutor come in my face and try to convict my client without specificity? Period. That would be an aghast to the law. So they are required to be as absolutely specific as available. So if there is a specific fact, whether it's urine in a pool, whether it's 25 bottles of baby oil, whether it's the ejaculation, urinating to the point where she can't breathe and is choking. We heard about the UTIs and cold sores. She went into all of that. They must give us those details. But to your earlier instinct, because these are your instincts, they're producing too. They're painting the picture. They're showing you with fine detail and broad stroke. This is a monster. Sean Combs is a monster. And he was so depraved. See, this is the psychology of the process. See, psychology is a big part of this, because when we talk about the crime of coercion, okay, and I know we're running out of time for this week. This is a great series, by the way. So Raindrops, Carlos King has gifted you, honey, to be able to get this in this level of detail and expertise on a weekly basis as this case continues. This is a gift, okay?
You are a gift, because I can only do this with you. So thank you so much.
So happy to do it, because it's important. I want our culture to understand what's happening here. I want the culture to know, Carlos, this is more than just the man coming for a Black successful man in America. This is more than that. I'm not saying that race doesn't play a part. We'll get to that eventually, but this is bigger than that. So when we talk about coercion, we're talking about the sex act happened. We know that these sex acts with Cassie, Sean Combs, and male escorts and others happened. That is not disputed. Here's what's in dispute, Carlos King, and this is where this case will turn or fail. Can the prosecution make the case convincingly to not 1, 2, or 3, but 12 different men and women that behavior rose to the level of by force and unwillingness? So that's why you keep hearing even her own prosecution team, who she's their witness, right, asking her, did you feel free to leave? That's very important. And when she says something like, not really. Now I'm gonna tell you, as a defense lawyer, I'm happy to hear that, because I'm going to go in on that when cross-examination time does come, and it is coming. As soon as the prosecution, Carlos, is completely done with their examination, we call that direct exam. I expect her to be on the stand another day, if not 2 more days. She might even go into next week. Don't be surprised.
Wow.
Well, once they're done, they're going to have to say, defense, your witness. And then that's when they're going to get into her. They're going to try to destroy her credibility. They're going to try to make her the biggest slut that ever lived. They're going to try to make her desperate for fame. They're going to try to make her completely thirsty. And some of these things might apply. Hell, we don't know. We weren't there. So those are going to be the arguments. But the main one they're going to argue is, well, back when the government asked you, Miss Ventura, did you feel you had to do those things? You responded, it was the only way I could spend time with him. And then those 12 jurors, Carlos King, are going to have to decide for themselves individually, do I think that's coercion? Do I think when Sean Combs says, if you were to believe the testimony, when Sean Combs says, if you don't F this prostitute man I flew in from wherever for the freak off, that you know that's how we get down, and you know that's how you're my lady, and you know that's how you get my time and attention, and you want that, and if you don't do it right now, tonight, I'm going to release these sex tapes for all the world to see. Juror says, is that force? Is that Sean Combs enforcing overt willpower over her such that she doesn't feel free to say no to it? That's the question of this case.
Watch the full.
A lot of my work has been about the unexpected, kind of wanting to be the heroine and yet wanting to kill the heroine at the same time. And that kind of dilemma, that push and pull, is the underlying turbulence that I bring to each of the pieces that I make. The silhouette lends itself to, avoidance of the subject, not being able to look at it directly.
On. Oh, good morning and welcome to the Friday edition of Let It Be Known. I am your host, Stacey Brown.
Peace and love. I'm Neil Anderson and welcome. Come on in. We have a lot of headlines to get through, and we're going to jump more into that Puffy case a little bit later in the show. But right now, we're going to start off with some news on Smokey Robinson, right, Stacey?
We are going to start off with some news on Smokey Robinson. Smokey, apparently the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office has confirmed that they are investigating rape and sexual assault allegations against the Motown legend. We saw the story break about a week ago. Several housekeepers said that he assaulted them, one beginning in 2007 and the other as late as 2022. So Smokey Robinson, at 85 years old, is under police investigation for these assaults.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to track this story. 85.
85 years old. Yeah. And listen, let's be clear. I don't care how old you are. It's not that we're feeling sorry for someone. If you did this, there's nothing to feel sorry about. From anybody else's standpoint, you feel sorry for the victims. If in fact he did this, it's just so weird that somebody in his position at 85 years old would be under investigation for such heinous crimes. So we will see, Neil.
For sure.
Here's something, and it's and I'm bringing this up because I think it's really interesting because of who said it and where they said it. After saying that he and the E Street Band were about to call upon the righteous power of music, art, and rock and roll in dangerous times, Bruce Springsteen told a sold-out crowd in England that, quote, "In my home, the America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years, is currently in the hands of a corrupt, sadistic, incompetent, and treasonous administration." He says, "Tonight we ask all who believe in democracy and the best of our American spirit to rise with us. Raise your voice against authoritarianism and let freedom ring." And I bring that up, Niel, and to our audience here's the point. How important it is to have someone a huge white rock star speak out like this, and more importantly, or just as importantly, that he did it in England, another country. Does that resonate? How important is that?
I think a lot of people are speaking out against Donald Trump. George Clooney. I think there are lots of conversations worldwide that are happening. And that story's been trending all week about Bruce Springsteen speaking out, and I'm glad he is. It's important. It's important as many people as possible to speak up and speak out against this Trump administration.
Yeah, and again, the thing is, yes, George Clooney and others, but this is Bruce Springsteen we're talking about. This is born in the USA. This is the guy. Michael, Madonna, and Bruce dominated the 1980s, and Bruce continues to rock on throughout the years. Madonna and all of those folks, but to have a Bruce Springsteen do, I saw April Ryan post about this yesterday as well. I think it resonated with so many people that, wow, now you got this huge stage that Bruce Springsteen of all people, and it's not, in any way meaning like if Beyonce stood, like you said, her concerts, she's really making some great points in her concert. It certainly doesn't overshadow that, but it does call attention in another venue with another set of people that even this lily white superstar is saying there's a problem in America. And that problem is at the White House. So I just thought it was interesting, folks.
No, I think it's important that as many people that have platforms of millions of people to continue to raise the alarm. You brought up Beyonce, she'll be going overseas. She'll be going to Paris with that same message about, what America looks like. And it's not just about the Trump plan. I think so many people are using their platform. You brought up Madonna. If you remember Trump's first term, when she went viral worldwide, when she went to the Women's March, and she said some things that even the Women's March organizers was like, please don't say that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it is important if you have a platform and you don't like, because it's a lot of people that have a platform that like what Trump is doing. Think about Kid Rock. When you have somebody like a Bruce Springsteen amplify this on his tour, when he could just be singing Born in the USA, and that could be sufficient, right? That he speaks up and he speaks out.
Yeah, Austin says that we need Bruce to say this at U.S. concerts. And Mike V is asking, really, it might sound funny, but it's a legitimate question. Will they allow Bruce to return to the U.S. after saying that? Because they are arresting students who speak out on college campuses. So
I doubt if he has a problem getting back in the U.S.
You never know with a dictatorship, though, right?
You never know, but that's a white man. White people get passes that black folks and other people don't. But you never know. But
you never know. And real quick, New York Mayor Ras Baraka appeared in federal court yesterday.
New Jersey, right?
Newark. I said, Newark, New Jersey.
New York. Okay.
Ras Baraka appeared in federal court for a status conference on the Trump administration's charge that he trespassed at an immigration detention center in the city. The DOJ says they do intend to take him to trial. This is just preposterous.
It's disrespectful. And it's just, another play from the Klan, trying to, just embarrass leader. I mean, this is the leader of one of, and I think that all of the Congress member, told it, his significance in the state of New Jersey. And I think it's important to point out too that detention center is ran by GEO, which is a privatized prison. And it's just, instead of focusing on them and how they're getting all of these government contracts and expected to make billions of dollars and amplifying why he was there and the importance and the significance of him pointing out what he was doing, he's being punished for it.
And as David Youngblood mentioned, they also want to charge the Congress members that was there too. And again, video bears out that they were invited in. So this is certainly an abuse of the DOJ. This is weaponizing the DOJ as he claimed the previous administration did. It's totally weaponizing the DOJ. There's no question about it.
And it's trying to scare you like any other elected officials, if they are planning to do something like this, they're trying to say, well, think twice because this could happen to you.
Okay. Well, I tell you what's trending and what continues to trend is, of course, the trial of Sean Diddy, Puff Daddy Love Combs. And of course, what's been dominating the headlines the last couple of days is his ex-girlfriend and protege, I guess, if you will, Cassie Ventura has been on the stand. She's been subjected to some grueling testimony, cross-examination, as well as direct examination. Here to talk about it and help us try and navigate this mud is author, speaker, attorney, and brand strategist, media executive, Faye McCray. Thanks for joining us, Faye.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. So a lot is going on, Faye. You mentioned that one of your many hats you wear is attorney. So let me ask you, how do we, when you think about Cassie's testimony, how do we legally and culturally define consent in relationships where power is deeply imbalanced?
Yeah, I mean, such a great question. I mean, so what we're seeing really is first at the core is a sex trafficking and racketeering case. And I want everybody sort of to remember that because I think we're putting Cassie on trial. We're seeing it in the headlines, we're seeing it in the comments. So Diddy Love, Sean Combs is facing very serious allegations, including sex trafficking by force and racketeering. So the prosecution is arguing that he operated a criminal enterprise that exploited women for sex under coercion and manipulation. But the defense claims that these sexual activities were consensual, and they're looking at text messages, they're looking at communications between Combs and Ventura. However, the prosecution is countering that these interactions occurred within the context of a power imbalance and psychological manipulation. So when we think of consent, sometimes we think of yes or no, and we're not thinking of the imbalance of power and what it looks like to manipulate someone psychologically.
And looking at the case, what have been some of takeaways that you have seen that have stood out to you?
You know, I mean, I think when we just really look at it, you know, from our 100-foot view, Cassie's story isn't just being told, right? It's being dissected, it's being doubted, it's being debated. And I think the biggest things that I see being debated are this sort of ambiguity in how she dealt with Sean Combs, and people are taking that to sort of doubt her veracity, right? There's moments of affection. There's a moment where she talks about being a jealous girlfriend. And a lot of folks are struggling to understand how she could have been in a relationship that lacked consent when she had all of this sort of ambiguity in how she was dealing with him. And I think what we need to understand, especially in the media, is we need to report on this with not just accuracy, but also care. You know, and understanding that it is complicated, right? It is re-traumatizing. And there are going to be things that we just, especially if we haven't been in a position of a victim or an alleged victim, that we just aren't going to understand.
Yeah, and going along with that, Faye, Cassie did testify that Combs raped her in 2018, yet she admitted to afterwards, though, having consensual sex with him after that while she was with her now husband, Mr. Fine there. But for those who question how someone who could return after such a assault, what does the law and lived experience tell us about this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it tells us that it's complicated, right? It tells us that it's complicated, especially when you're dealing with unhealed wounds, when you're dealing with, you know, someone who she was 21 years old when she allegedly met Sean Combs. So we know that she was young and that she was vulnerable. And again, we have to make space for that complication. Now, you know, the prosecution does have the burden here, you know, in proving that this happened. So the defense is you know, doing its job at this point of casting doubt on her veracity. But also what we know, you know, when we sort of dissect what happens in these instances is that there is a back and forth. You know, it's not always I walk away. It's not always black and white. I mean, we all saw the video, you know, and in many of our minds, we watched that video and we were like, there's absolutely no doubt what's happening here. But we know that there were years after that video.
Mm-hmm. You brought up a couple of key points, but when we're looking at how the prosecution is handling the case, and we look at the charges, like we know that the charges are not domestic violence, and we look at how the questioning is happening. Do you think that the prosecution is laying the course for the 5 charges he's charged with? Because right now it just seems like it's just a case of domestic violence or a relationship that was horrific. It was horrible. But does that really equate to racketeering and human trafficking?
Yeah, I feel like that is such a fantastic question. And I think what we're seeing, right, is the defense really, really leaning into that, right? They've admitted, he is an abuser. But does that rise to the level of some of these charges? I think what we're seeing, is definitely the prosecution laying the foundation for his exploitation, right, of women, in that he had the capability and sort of the mindset to do the things that he's doing. But I think we're going to see it play out, right, with more witness testimony as this trial goes on, other things that sort of lend themselves to these kind of bigger allegations.
Hey, again, I'm gonna ask you to put your attorney's hat on, go inside the courtroom. 12 juries, the 12 main jurors, are said to be all very educated. Each one of them having at least a college degree, one college degree. Some of them have multiple college degrees. There are biochemists on this jury. They're basically rocket science on this scientists on this jury. How does that play with this particular case, with the prosecution, with the defense, when you have a jury who supposedly, presumably, is perhaps one of the most intelligent juries you'll ever find? How does that dictate how the prosecution moves and how the defense moves?
Yeah, this is such a great question. So this is a very public case, right? And you'd be hard pressed to find someone that doesn't have an opinion about this. And I think when you look into having an educated juror pool, you really learn to find those people that can answer a question with "it depends." People that aren't just going to give in to public opinion and see what they've seen maybe in the video. I mean, I'm sure they've asked a question if they saw the video. They probably didn't get a lot of honesty. I don't know who didn't see the video at this point. But the point is, you want people that can take public opinion and put it aside, kind of take that sensationalized, those headlines, and put it aside and really listen to the facts of the case. So I think it becomes a harder burden, right? It becomes a harder burden for the prosecution to prove, because people are listening. They're listening for the details. They're listening for the facts to really prove their case.
Do you think it's important for Puff to testify?
It depends. It always depends. I mean, we know he's a celebrity. We know he's charming, right? I mean, we've all seen him throughout the years in his interviews with Ellen, and so I'm sure if anybody can sell him, it's him. So I think people are waiting to hear from him. So I think it would go a long way if he got on the stand.
So let me go back to Cassie again, and because there's so much talk about this. I've talked about it again from a very ignorant standpoint, because I have no idea what it is to be a victim like that, right?
Yeah.
But her testimony, she says that they started dating about, I guess, around about 2006 or whatever, and she, at some point, she was seeing someone at the time that they started dating. She was seeing someone at the time they were dating. She cheated on that individual. He cheated on, I guess it was Kim Porter. And then, she admitted to being very jealous of Kim Porter. Around 2011, she starts cheating with Kid Cudi, based on her testimony. Then, of course, like I said, there was another cheating incident in 2013 based on her testimony. And then the 2018, after she was separated from him and she started seeing her now husband, and then the incident happens. People will argue that there were many times, in those times I mentioned, where she could have left. She even talked about being upset with him because he kept his kids away from her. She wanted more time with his kids. When you hear all of this, of course, the court of public opinion and those like myself who very ignorant about this stuff, you start to think, okay, I don't get it. No, she didn't deserve any of the abuse, but she could have left. What do you say to people? How do you educate us?
Yeah. Listen, there are no perfect victims, right? And I think oftentimes we need victims to pass a certain threshold of sort of perfection, and it needs to be clean in order for us to believe them. And I think that's especially the case when it comes to idols. Our idols in particular, Black people don't play about our idols, right? Like once we love someone, once we think someone is great, it is really hard to get them off that pedestal. We've seen it with Bill Cosby. I mean, now could be facing it with Smokey Robinson, right? Allegedly. So, when we think about people coming forward, we have to remember that, the stories aren't always going to follow a straight line. They're not always going to be neat, especially when it comes to domestic violence and abuse. There's so much psychologically, it's so complex. There's emotional entanglement that often makes it very difficult for victims to leave abusive relationships. So I think we need to kind of watch it with a certain degree of care and compassion, and understanding that it's not always going to follow a straight line. Now, we want to also listen critically, right? Especially when we think of the role of the jurors and really listening to the evidence. I mean, a man's life and freedom are on the line. But I think what we're seeing playing out in this context, for sure, is what we see in a lot of abusive relationships. It's just very complex.
So when we're talking about the charges, RICO, which is organized crime, that means it's not just one, it's many, right? But we're only looking at Puff Daddy. So when we hear Cassie's testimony, is she a co-conspirator that has received immunity, or who are the other co-conspirators besides Puff if you're going to charge him with RICO? There's only one person arrested.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of speculation around it, right? At this juncture, I know a lot of names have been floated. I don't know that it's, kind of fair to say kind of who all the players are here, but I think we're only scratching the surface of what could be a much, much bigger enterprise.
So you think more charges could come on other people?
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of that, Faye, and it's a great line of questioning, Niele, because a lot of that, doesn't that depend on if they get a conviction? Because I remember so well the Michael Jackson trial, and I remember Tom Sneddon, the district attorney at the time, telling me that they certainly would have prosecuted others had they gotten the conviction from on Michael.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point, Stacey, because he really is kind of the top, right? This is the most public. This is, the sort of biggest get. So I think we see how this goes, and I think there's more to come.
And then we talk about human trafficking. Let's touch on that. Being, as they say, flued out, even though it's not a word.
Flued out.
Does that consent to human trafficking? Because we heard the testimony from the male escort. It was a very consenting situation that was going on.
Yeah.
Is that considered human trafficking, or are they stretching that charge?
Yeah, I think it probably depends again on all sort of the details of the interaction of that relationship. When we think of trafficking, we do think of moving people, right? Sort of like what we saw in the R. Kelly case, where we're just crossing state lines and there's a lot of players involved. So there's a lot of layers, I think, that have to come to the surface in order to really prove that out.
And just real quick, going back, briefly, the importance of Cassie testifying about her drug use, the lies to past partners, and even cheating. Is this a credibility risk on the part of the prosecution, or is it a transparency strength?
I think it depends on which side you're talking to, right? I think, if we're talking to the defense, it certainly speaks to the credibility of Cassie as a witness. When we're talking about drug use, I think the prosecution, again, is going to lean into the fact that it wasn't consensual, right? That she felt coerced into using drugs, that she felt coerced into engaging in these activities. So I think, it's just going to depend on which side you're leaning, what the evidence is demonstrating. But I do think that the prosecution is smart for leaning into the transparency of it, right? If these things were to come out on cross with the defense bringing them up, then we will say, well, why are you hiding that? But they're being very open about the complexity of her as a victim, of her as a witness, and she's being open and honest about that as well.
Yeah, she's supposed to wrap up her testimony today, and she is supposed to be the prosecution's biggest witness besides another Jane who hasn't been named. If that being the case, do you think that she has done what the prosecutors had hoped for her to do?
I believe so. I believe so. I think that she's answered the line of questioning. I think that it's all just going to depend, as it layers in with the rest of the case, we'll see how it plays out. But I think she spoke to the things that I think we, even as the public, were hoping that she would speak to, and we shall see.
The testimony mentioned assistance setting up hotels, collecting escorts, and even procuring freak-off supplies. If proven, what does this mean for the music industry as a whole, Faye, and for the racketeering charges that Diddy faces?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I hope to see from something like this, if it is demonstrated that Sean Combs did in fact, commit these things, is there's just a shift, right? I mean, I think we've known for years, what was it? The record company industries are shady, in hip hop, we've known that line for years. I mean, I hope that there is a more critical look, at these power dynamics. I hope that there is a more critical look at these players. Because at the end of the day, these are people that are living out their dreams, and hoping to kind of get into these industries and share their artistry. And what we're learning is that there are a lot of people allegedly taking advantage.
Yeah. Stacey, did you have another?
Yes, absolutely. Faye, and I know Greer's yelling this out too. Who we talk just a little bit about the trauma of it all. Cassie's on the stand. She's very pregnant, as they say, in front of the entire world. The public shame of, the stuff that she herself has admitted to. The urination and the other, horrible stuff that she participated or was subjected to. Can we really dive into how that might affect the jury, the case itself, that trauma, whether she was a willing participant or not? It just seems like it was just too much.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's hard, and she's pregnant, and this is, I think we're seeing sort of, why victims are so hesitant to come out. It's because of having to relive the trauma that they've experienced, and again, being dissected, being doubted, being debated. I mean, some of the headlines I'm sure you've seen are just sensational, right? Like with just kind of poking fun at some of this stuff, when at its core, these are horrible things that could have occurred. So I think it's traumatizing, it's emotionally brutal. I think any thinking human can see and feel that, and thinking about what she's been subjected to. But I also think it's triggering for survivors watching at home, or people who are reading these headlines who've been through these things. It's constant exposure to trauma, and it's re-traumatizing, and also could be desensitizing to audiences. I mean, I think we're seeing that in the fact that people can laugh at some of these things, right? It's like, how can we laugh at things that are so horrific?
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
A lot of people are trying to understand, she was paid $20 million that came out during the trial. She was paid for this entire scenario that she is having to relive. Can you break down or help us understand how is it that you can get paid and then still testify? Because a lot of people thought, okay, she was paid for this situation. How is she able to still testify? I mean, we know it was a civil case, but can you break that down a little more?
Yeah, I mean, definitely two different cases, right? So she did settle her lawsuit, but it all depends on sort of the stipulations of that lawsuit. And obviously there wasn't kind of anything preventing her from speaking. So now, her testimony is vital to kind of this case. So it's just two different things. I think we just have to view them in two different avenues. What she's doing here now is related to the criminal trial.
Could he have put that stipulation when he paid her? And he just didn't?
I think with respect to other civil suits, but I think with the case, I think these charges are so serious, that I think he couldn't have prevented her from speaking to some of those instances.
Yeah. Just to go back to the trauma for one moment, Faye, before we let you go, her testifying this way, do you think that it's somewhat therapeutic for her just to get it all out in this forum, or could it be more damaging later?
It's such a deeply personal question. I mean, I've heard some sort of speculation even about what is that like to come home and, have to talk to your spouse or your husband. My assumption is that this is something that they've talked about before, but oof, can you imagine, what that's like to sort of go home and have to discuss it? I think there's no doubt that it's re-traumatizing, for sure, to have to relive these moments. Is there catharsis in it, like in seeing your potential abuser be held accountable? Be held to public scrutiny, sure, but at the end of the day, she's also subjecting herself to a lot of judgment.
Yeah, and it's funny too that you say it that way, or ironic, because I think too he's sitting there. He has to be totally embarrassed at this stuff. These celebrities are generally real private people when it comes to their private lives, and something as private as sexual behavior, and then the whole being compared to a Tootsie Roll and all of that stuff. He has to be totally seething over there, in embarrassment as well. But we have a clip we want to show before you leave, Faye. And
You're scared of what people would say if they saw your natural hair, but you don't understand why Cassie didn't leave. You don't want to uninvite the uncle who touched somebody in the family from Christmas because it would be rude, but you don't understand why Cassie didn't leave. You got married to someone you didn't love because you didn't want to look like you weren't a wife, but you don't understand why Cassie wouldn't leave. If y'all would really stop projecting your fears of yourself onto others, we would be able to actually do what we need to do, which is love each other, support each other, and in protecting our communities, understand the difference between tearing someone down and holding them accountable with love.
Your thoughts on that, Faye?
I mean, always breaking it down, that one, to make sure. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's calling for empathy. It's calling for compassion, which is so important when reviewing a case like this. Look, viewers, we shape culture too, right? How we discuss these stories online, in group chats, in comments, send very clear signals, not just to people who are going through this, but also people who are survivors. So when we think about the casual jokes, the skepticism, the dismissal, it could shut down people in our lives that are quietly surviving, right? So I think empathy, and how we talk about and consume these stories, it matters. It matters. And I think we all play a role.
Well said.
Awesome. Well, Faye McCray, we appreciate your insights. Always a pleasure to have you on. This is, I think we needed this morning. So thanks so much for joining Let It Be Known.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you.
Take care. Well, there you have it. So I guess we'll continue to follow this as this thing moves forward, and we'll have other experts come on. I think it's best, Neil, wouldn't you agree, to have experts try and at least break it down a little bit for us, people who know stuff, I guess.
I mean, well, yeah, I think it's both. I think it's we report on what happens daily in the court as journalists, and then when we want to take a deeper dive into the conversation, it's always good to have experts. But I have some headlines. More Black men are in trouble, Stacey. Chris Brown was arrested earlier Thursday morning in Manchester, England, for allegedly hitting a music producer with a tequila bottle at a London nightclub in 2023. Now, the Metropolitan Police told The Sun that Brown was detained at a five-star hotel on suspicion of causing grievance and bodily harm. Now, people called out Chris Brown for this and were saying it's karma because they didn't appreciate Chris posting "Free Tory," referring to Tory Lane. So the day before he posted it on Wednesday. He got arrested on Thursday. And speaking of Tory Lanez, earlier this week, it was reported that Tory was stabbed multiple times in a California prison, which we reported on. But on Wednesday, a news conference was held on behalf of Tory by Unite the People. And it was suggested that Kelsey Harris, Meg the Stallion's former best friend, is the one who shot Meg.
Mm. Listen, they've been litigating this since forever now, and I don't think that's going to change anything. Prosecution, the one thing about prosecutors, which they hate, and judges too. They don't want their prosecution to be overturned. The judges don't want their decisions to be overturned, and it takes forever. Even if that is true, Tory will still sit for a few years in prison while they try to unravel it, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. It's how I'm not saying unfortunate. I'm not judging the Tory Lanes, Megan Thee Stallion. I'm just saying in general, that's an unfortunate procedure that happens there in American justice.
Yeah, it's interesting because as of yesterday, Tory's legal team hadn't filed anything in response to this press conference, nor has Kelsey spoke out to say, I didn't shoot my ex-friend. So it's just
Right.
interesting that this press conference has happened, but now everybody's gone silent.
I think Tory's attorneys are smart not to say anything right away. They have to do their own digging into this to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Because if they come out guns a blazing um, and have nothing to accept somebody's hearsay, because that's what it is right now, hearsay,
Well, I mean,
then
yeah, but they had a press conference. So, I mean, for a press conference to make such huge allegations, I mean,
mhm.
Tory's team has to be a part of it. So, if you come out guns a-blazing like this, wouldn't you think that the next step would be to file?
So who had the press conference? I thought you said Tory's attorneys have not said anything. They had the press
No, they
conference?
haven't said anything, but his father was there. So, I mean,
Okay.
this was an organization called Unite the People,
Hmm.
organized the press conference. But Tory and his family were in much support of this press conference coming out. And you would
Oh,
just
I would
think that
imagine so. Yeah.
if they came out with such strong allegations and they have this witness, that they would be prepared to pull the trigger before
I
any
don't.
of this happened. I mean, I you
Yeah,
would
not
think
all the
that.
time, because attorneys caution families, hang on, hang on. They generally will caution you, and a lot of times in our angst to make sure to say my family member, my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, whatever, my uncle is innocent. We rush ahead instead of going along with what would be a good legal plan, and because it's hard to do. Your emotions got the best of you.
Yeah,
So
it
I'm
says,
not
yeah.
sure.
It says lead legal consultant Walter Roberts. So I mean that's what I'm saying. Like his whole
Yeah.
team was there. You would think that if they were going to come out guns a-blazing like this, they
Mhm.
would be prepared to pull the trigger. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting that they would do all of this and then
It
not
is.
foul. Yeah, it's
It
very
definitely
interesting.
is. Wow. Well, this is something, Meg the Stallion obviously was shot. And I don't know again, I don't know. I'm not saying she's lying or not. She definitely was shot, but I don't know
Mhm.
what she gains by pointing the finger at the wrong person.
Right. And she really never said anything. This was really brought upon when it first happened. Meg was silent. She kept quiet. She was kind of forced because the charges came out to speak about it, but she never was one from the get-go to start pointing fingers because it was a lot going on that night. I don't know. A lot of us watched it unfold on Instagram from when they was at Kylie Jenner's house. And when they tell you sex, drugs, and rock and roll was rock and rolling that night, the pills was popping, the bottles was popping.
They
A
was
lot
having a freak
going on
off.
that they was I don't know what was happening, but it was a lot going on that night. And Meg
Oh
definitely
gosh.
was a victim. She, like you said, she definitely was shot. Um, but this is just interesting for them to hold this press conference and then everybody goes mute. And you have this girl, Kelsey, she's not even saying anything to
Yeah,
defend
that's
herself, to
weird.
say I didn't shoot her. Nobody's saying anything now. So it's just it's
Um,
interesting to pay attention to.
Greer says that she was trying to hold whomever down, but at the end of the day, she believes he shot her.
Oh,
So
Greer,
it's
yeah.
At the end, she said Meg believes he shot her. So that, to me, lends some doubt to who shot her. Right? She believes he shot her. It's not, I know he shot me.
Yeah, they were loaded that night. I remember they was in a
And
fight.
that's probably
Kylie
part of
Jenner,
the problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kylie Jenner kicked them out of her house. She was like, "Y'all
Don't
got
don't
to
don't make
go."
Kylie Jenner out to be some sort of saint or
No,
hero.
not no. That's not saying that she's a saint or hero. I'm just telling you how loaded they were. And I remember that video.
Yeah, Trix,
They were, yeah. It was a
Trixie
lot
says
going on that
that
night.
she says that Kylie threw them out and let Tori stay, and Megan got mad, so he left
And
with
Meg
them.
came back to get him. Meg left. She left. And then she came back talking about she forgot her flip flops and then told him to get in the car.
And you know what?
Meanwhile, the friend Kelsey was sleeping with him and didn't know. And then it all came out. And then it was,
It's a mess. But she also says that Kelsey had immunity, so that is why she's not trying to speak. Um, so they gave her immunity, so they gave Kelsey immunity, so Kelsey can't be charged. So that makes so now, I didn't know all this, that they gave Kelsey immunity. So that makes that press conference even more interesting in certain other ways, because even if Kelsey says I did it, what are you gonna do? It's like having it's immunity.
mm-hmm. And maybe that's what they're hoping for, Tory Lane side. But we will continue
Yeah,
to track
that's
this
gonna be
story.
interesting,
We're going
because
to
the
continue to track.
prosecution is not gonna want to hear it. My star witness I gave immunity to is the one who did it. No, they're not gonna accept that.
Mhm.
It's gonna. But anyway, go ahead. You got any more headlines for us?
And in more black man trouble,
Oh
DDG, that's the
gosh.
popular
Oh
streamer that
yes.
was in a relationship with Haley Bailey. He's the latest to
Oh
coming to
gosh.
the courts. Now, a judge has granted Haley Bailey temporary custody and a restraining order after accusing DDG of abuse. DDG is also required to stop posting and streaming about her and their son. A lot of people have mixed emotions about this situation. News broke yesterday that she was in where St. Lucia with another dude. They were trying to tie the two together. And a lot of people just feel like this situation could have been handled different, but it's young love. They're both two young, gifted and black individuals. DDG, he is a very popular streamer. He doesn't really attack her unless he says he can't see his son, but he loves his son. So this is just an interesting dynamic. And a lot of people are saying that they think that she could have handled it differently, but
Mm.
who are we to say? We don't know what's going on in that situation.
What's her sister name?
Chloe.
That's the one that we talked to down in Disney. She was ambassador a couple of years ago. Seemed very, very nice. Seemed like some nice people there. That's all I gotta say. You got any more headlines?
And so a survey of about 26,000 workers in 35 countries, including Europe, Asia Pacific, and the Americas, found that work-life balance is now the highest ranking factor for workers when it comes to their current or future jobs. So this is the first time in this workforce reports 22 years where work-life balance ranked higher than pay. So people are choosing self care, self love over career advancement or pay. I thought that was interesting. I think that's a generational divide. These
Mm,
millennials and Gen Zers, they want self-care, they want mental health day breaks. They want all their PTO, all their time, and then some. And then you have like baby boomers and Generation X. We come from a generation where you work hard, you get what you need, you retire, and then you enjoy your self-care. So I just think this was an interesting study to show how things are changing and people are putting their happiness and their wellness over their careers.
wow. Okay. um, you got any more? You
Now
done?
let's step into the black card. What's the
Well,
black
before
card
we
for
do, I
today?
wanted to add this to your topics because I saw this morning. I think Greer had sent this over this morning. And real quick, Supreme Court Justice Kagan warned the Trump administration that if the Supreme Court allowed Trump to end birthright citizenship, essentially saying the executive can change the Constitution, that a future president could end the Second Amendment and take away everyone's guns. You talk about, I mean, she just said if you do that, then that means that this could happen too. And you know how they feel about guns and the Second Amendment. And real quick, the other birthright thing, the Supreme Court is weighing this whole birthright thing that Trump wants to eliminate. Well, if he eliminates that, so many people, even in his sphere, will be hurt by it, including Marco Rubio, who will no longer be a U.S. citizen. That means that he can't be Secretary of State anymore. And that means that he could also be deported. So be careful what you wish for, Marco, little Marco. And so with that, she mentioned Chris Brown earlier. Well, it's another Brown that we're gonna snatch the black card from today, and that is Judge Joe Brown. Yes, Judge Joe Brown seems to be making a habit of tearing down other black men. And this time, speaking in an interview with The Art of the Dialogue, he was asked for his thoughts on Tyler Perry and all the work that he's produced over the years. Now, the interviewer was simply trying to give Tyler some flowers as to, you mentioned this, in fact, Neo, I think it was yesterday, that he built himself up. He built his own business, etc. Well, that question prompted the judge to give his 2 cents, and believe us when he said he didn't hold back. In fact, the former TV judge slammed Tyler Perry for pushing out works that the judge said, quote, don't push manhood. And he likened Tyler Perry's content to that of a crack dealer. I mean, come on.
I
Come
laughed
on.
so hard. Can we watch this, please? Can we watch it? It was so funny.
What his white counterparts get paid for doing. He strikes me as somebody that does not like manhood. It's first off, he doesn't get paid what his white counterparts get paid for doing essentially the same thing. He, along with some other people, pervade what I call mind crack. The crack dealer, if he's hardworking, enterprising, can make a lot of money, but it's still crack, whether it's ideas or whether it's drugs. It's his business. It's America. But I want somebody to start pushing manhood because I've seen 50 years worth of televised emasculation. I'm glad we have the Equalizer. I'm glad, but he's unfortunately dead now. Got the Concierge in the John Wick's series with the Continental Hotel, the brother with the shaved head. I'm glad we have those things. Who are they giving us as heroes to emulate? Not many.
How you feel about Tyler Perry?
The Equalizer. So Denzel's character died.
No, he was talking about the other show.
Oh, with Queen Latifah.
No, not that one. The other show with the other man. I forgot.
Oh, John Wick or something.
Yeah, John Wick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Mike V says that the same Judge Joe Brown who was buck dancing at the White House during Black History Month, Negro, please.
Right. I don't know what it was about that video. I think it was the end of Wednesday when that hit, and it was just such a full day. Wednesday was a wild day because you had the Diddy trial, then you had the Tory Lanez situation, then you had Trump doing some crazy stuff. It was just a wild day, and to see that video, it was just the funniest thing to me. I'm like,
This
Woo!
guy.
What a
Wow.
day.
Well, yeah. Well, we're done with Judge Joe Brown. Goodbye, Judge. Case dismissed. Um, he John Rushmore, first African American college graduate. Okay, on this date in 1826, John Rushworm was the first African American college graduate. John Rushworm happened to be the founder of the Black Press, one of the two founders of the Black Press,
Oh, then
along
that's
with
important.
along with Samuel Cornish. So
That
good.
is the only Black history fact we need for today.
Well, there's a couple of others, but that is courtesy of Greer. I did not know that. So John Rushmore. So some Black history, some Black press history right there. They started Freedom's Journal just a year apparently after he graduated college. In 1827, Freedom's Journal was started in New York. So wow. And that was the start of the Black Press of America. Unbelievable. That is great. Great stuff. 100. So that was 199 years ago when he graduated. And of course, the Black Press is 198 years old. So
Wow.
also on this day in 1927, William Harry Barnes became the first African American certified by any American surgical board. So another great achievement there as far as higher education is concerned.
And on this date in 1964, Motown Records has its first #1 hit, and that was Mary Wells's "My Guy."
You know, I would not have guessed that My Guy was the first #1 hit for Motown. I would not have guessed that. All right, folks, we will tell you this. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday. Thanks for watching.